I needed somebody who could join me in the festivities of color, so who else but our good friend David Kopel. That is a splendid Christmas tie.
Thank you very much. Bought it at a fine store on North Downing.
How much did they pay you to take it?
I paid them about $15.
You're one of a kind. All right, you were in D.C. just recently in your role as Second Amendment expert, giving testimony to a Senate committee. Which committee was that?
That was the Senate Judiciary Committee chaired by Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa and Ranking Member Dianne Feinstein of California.
Who is a big gun rights fan, so she must have been thrilled to see you yet again. Did she blow you a kiss or something? Give you a little wink?
She didn't explicitly say anything about our 1994 testimonial exchange. But she did listen and seemed to take into account what I'd said. I was testifying about her bill on bump stocks, and I said I agreed with the concept of regulating them like machine guns, but pointed out some technical flaws in her bill, like its extremely overbroad definitions.
Stop using demeaning terms like broad. We can't do that anymore. Something to think about. All right, so you got nothing there. I caught you off guard.
No, I don't know what I'm supposed to call them now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Dames. They go by dames now. Just remember that. Or skirts.
My mother's cousin appeared in Dames in the Navy with Nancy Reagan, and that led to her, Marcille, and her husband Clark becoming longtime friends with the Reagans.
And there's nothing like a dame. From South Pacific?
Yes.
Let's just not tell anybody how we know about these musicals.
Okay.
Let's talk about reciprocity. What you were there to talk about in front of the committee mostly was a bill that's going through Congress and looks like it could pass. That means that people who have a concealed weapons permit in one state can use it in another state. Explain the concept first.
Sure, and actually that's not what I talked about with the committee, but that was part of my written testimony. So the House of Representatives, on the same day I was testifying, December 6th, before the Senate, passed a bill from the full House, which now comes over to the Senate, for interstate reciprocity, so that your concealed carry permit would function like a driver's license and be valid in all other states.
Do we want this? I mean, right now Colorado has what I consider a pretty successful concealed carry system. So you want a concealed carry permit, your sheriff issues it. It's a shall issue. The Independence Institute, and your work especially, was crucial of turning this into law, so that a sheriff can't say, no, I just don't like you, you don't get a permit. And what is it, 33 other states? If you want to go to Florida and you have a permit in Colorado, they have what's called reciprocity. You're fine to carry it in Florida.
Right. Colorado is not really the problem that Congress is addressing here, but it would benefit Coloradans. So, for example, if you go to California with your Colorado permit, if this bill passes, you would be able to carry there. And California is one of that tiny handful of states that A, won't issue permits to non-residents under any conditions, and B, has no reciprocity. So where you get real severe problems, this is what Congress is addressing, is, for example, New Jersey is a similar situation. And so a driver from Pennsylvania who has a Pennsylvania permit, may cross over into New Jersey. Sometimes you just make a wrong turn. Maybe you get pulled over by the police.
Because nobody goes to Jersey on purpose.
Some of my relatives live there, so they're intentionally there, and it is the Garden State if you go to the right spot. But these Pennsylvanians don't think so, because then they end up, they've got their Pennsylvania permit, but it's not valid in New Jersey, and in New Jersey it's a mandatory 3.5-year sentence just for that. And so that is a terrible infringement of the right of interstate travel, among other things, and that's the primary problem that Congress is addressing.
But doesn't this infringe on something that we strongly believe in, which is states' rights, that Colorado has a system, another state might have another system? Is it the role of the federal government to say, hey, even though you don't allow concealed carry in your state, as long as somebody from Colorado comes in, you have to allow the Coloradan to do it? We,
at times, have changed our Constitution to, among other things, promote greater protection of national civil rights. So, for example, on slavery, we ultimately didn't say, well, that's a local matter. We said, no, we're going to have a national standard, and we change the Constitution with the 13th Amendment.
But you're not talking about changing the Constitution here.
Yeah, when we changed, and we also changed the Constitution with the 14th Amendment, which gave Congress the power under Section 5 to protect national civil rights. And that was a very deliberate addition, saying we had this one system that worked pretty well at the beginning, starting in 1789, but it ultimately led to a civil war and needs to be addressed. We have to say that while the states can have lots of differences, every state has to respect a baseline minimum of civil rights. And one of the things the 14th Amendment was specifically enacted for, based on the congressional debates and also how its proponents explained it to the public, was A, to protect the right to arms, and B, to protect the right of interstate travel. So this bill does both, and it is well within congressional power ever since, I believe, 1868, when it was ratified. We decided to change the state-federal balance and give Congress a national power to protect national civil rights.
But you can understand why anti-gun states are flipping out over this idea. You know, they have been very good at making it near impossible for lawful citizens to carry concealed or carry at all. And so in Texas, this is not a problem. But if you're going to anti-gun states, whether it's California or New Jersey or wherever it is, you can understand why they don't want this. This seems like a loophole to them, so that their citizens can't conceal carry, but visitors can.
Well, all of these states have licensing laws that say you can apply for a concealed carry permit.
Every state in the country.
Every state in the country. Now, whether you get that permit, you're right, you say in Pennsylvania they'd have a fair and objective process. In New Jersey or Maryland, there would be a lot more obstacles, but even those states do issue permits. And Congress is saying,
and
look,
D.C., which it's...
Well, in D.C. is moving towards a Colorado-type law, where qualified law-abiding adults who pass safety training and fingerprints and all that will be able to get permits in D.C. So all they're saying, well, one of the things this national bill is, if it becomes law, would say, is New Jersey, you can't say, oh, we only issue permits to residents. Anybody else from any other state, there's no way you can ever lawfully carry in the state of New Jersey. And after all, if the District of Columbia, which is not the most pro-gun jurisdiction of the country, if they're now choosing to move towards the national system, similar to what we have in Colorado, if they can do it, New Jersey can at least stop throwing visitors in jail for 3.5 years.
What does this mean to a state like, is it Vermont, that has a no permit at all? If you're legal to own a gun, you're legal to carry it concealed? What does that do there? So if I live in Vermont, I'm legal to carry a gun. I don't need to get a permit. I can say with proudness, the Constitution is my concealed carry permit. I can't go down to New Jersey with a pocket Constitution and my gun, can I?
Well, under the bill that passed the House, you could. It says if you're in one of the approximately dozen states that, like Arizona, for example, which says you can apply for a permit if you want, and if you do, you may get some extra privileges or extra areas you can carry in. But in general, for a general public area, if you can lawfully carry a gun, if you're a law-abiding adult who can possess a handgun, then you don't need a permit to carry. And so an Arizonan, even without a concealed carry permit, would be able to carry in New Jersey. Now that's something that the Senate might decide to change, but that's how the bill stands as it passed the House.
All right, what happens next technically? So it's passed the House. What are its chances in the Senate?
Well, if Democrats who have voted for it in the past, like say Senator Michael Bennet, vote for it again, it would have a very good chance of passing.
In this polarized time, I really doubt that's going to happen.
And now that Michael Bloomberg, the malefactor of great wealth, has sort of taken over the Democratic Party on this issue and radicalized it, that may be harder.
You want to give it some odds? Because I have a hard time seeing Susan Collins getting on board on something like this. Am I getting that wrong?
I think Susan Collins has voted for it before. I think just about all the Republicans in Congress are for it. And last time it was up, when the Democrats controlled the Senate, it got 58 votes, which was not quite enough to get to that threshold of beating the filibuster with 60, but it was close. And both Mark Udall and Michael Bennet, our Colorado senators, voted for it.
Let's remind them of that later on. All right, talk to me. We've only got a couple minutes. You also testified, you were there to testify on bump stocks. the NRA surprised a lot of people when they said there needs to be a look at regulation of bump stocks after the tragedy in Las Vegas. What exactly does that mean? A lot of people said, "Oh, you're selling out. You're saying this is the first thing. What a sellout." Other people say, "Well, you're basically turning a gun into a machine gun, but it's not really an automatic. It's just something that makes your finger vibrate at a faster speed." What's the story?
So the federal statute that says something is a machine gun says it's something where you get 2 or more rounds with a single function of the trigger. That's the law Congress enacted, and that's what the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives has to implement. I think that the ATF correctly ruled in 2011 that bump stocks do not fit that definition, and so ATF didn't have any choice. It wasn't a matter of discretion. So
let me stop you there. The reason it didn't fit that description is because your finger is literally moving back and forth and pulling the trigger one pull at a time. It's just doing it really fast, correct?
Yes, and so ATF said, well, that all we can do is carry out the statute, so we don't have the power to do it. Now, NRA said, oh, ATF should go back and look at this again. ATF, in fact, announced that it's going to look at it again and more or less gave a hint they've come up with some kind of theory. I don't know what it's going to be to get around the statutory language. What I said to Congress was disagreed with what NRA and ATF have both said, which is I think the statute's clear. And so Congress should be the one that changes the statute. And they should say that, and I think the principle is, if it makes a gun function fire as fast as a machine gun, then the laws should be the same for that kind of device as for an actual machine gun.
What was wrong with Feinstein's proposal? Less than half a minute.
Among other things, it's way overbroad. It would outlaw things like, say, just changing the pressure on how much, if your trigger has 6 pounds of pressure to pull it, and you'd go to a gunsmith and they change it to 5 pounds because maybe your hands aren't as strong as average, she would define that as something that's prohibited and you have to actually destroy your gun.
And what is Santa Claus going to get a gunny like you?
Lots of ammunition.
Thank you. Go to independenceinstitute.org to read some of David's work. Read me in the Denver Post. Listen to me at KHOW Radio, and we'll see you next week.